I have been at Columbia Business School now 31 years, so I know it pretty well. I spent most of that time in the academic affairs office with the full-time MBA students, helping them register for classes and, deal with exams, all those kinds of interactive things. And I loved our students. And then I switched about 8 years ago to the admissions office, where I've gotten to know people in a whole different way. Reading their applications, you know about their dreams and goals in a way you don't when you're working with them about, the latest upset or celebration when they're students. So 8 years now in admissions, so I have a pretty good idea of how that works too. I came in the same year as a new dean, and there was a big switch that year. That's when we started the cluster system. In other words, students always had a core curriculum, but they could pick and choose the date, time, the professor. And this professor, this dean said, I don't think our students really get to know each other that way. So he instituted a system where you spend all of your core courses with the same group of 70 people. So that first semester, you will know them, that's your family. And it was amazing to feel, even in the hallways, just a different culture developed. With the cluster system, almost instantaneously that changed. And it became something that was a key value for us, was a sense of community. So every way that we could refine that. For instance, the clusters then got broken down into learning teams of 5 or 6 people so that you'll be working in a group throughout your core. And there's an algorithm, and then lots of secret sauce goes into making sure it's very diverse. People from different countries, different industries. We even do sort of a personality assessment to make sure that each team has what it needs to succeed and to help each other through the core. And it became infectious. It became something the students valued. And, they created something called CBS Matters, where on a weekly basis, the clusters, each individual takes turns doing a presentation about themselves and what matters to them. So by the end of that first year, there are bonds. I've been here so long that I've met many alums from years and years out, and they're still, I know people in their 70s who are now WhatsApping with their cluster mates. So I think it's a very important and maybe unique aspect of Columbia Business School is community comes first. That's really what makes the place work, both as a student and afterwards. We bring in August about 550 students, and we break that down into 8 clusters of roughly 65, 70 each. So you are taking all the core classes with that same group. And then within that cluster, you're doing your work with your learning team of 5 or 6 people. And I'm so focused on community that I completely left out the ways the school has changed in terms of there was a big push maybe 10 years ago for entrepreneurship, and that has permeated all of our coursework. No matter what course you're taking, you're always thinking in terms of what are the opportunities here? How can this be monetized and scaled? And then in the last few years with our new dean, there is a huge push toward data analytics and technology and digital media, digital everything really. It goes across every topic you can imagine. And that's been, you can see it reflected in the curriculum. We have, if you want to get very in the weeds, we have learning Python courses, all the way to higher level, incorporating digital and data analytics into your strategy. So that's probably the latest big turn that the school has taken, floating atop our ever, constant finance focus and management focus. Certain things never change. You evaluate people the way we always have in terms of academic achievement and professional promise. Perhaps the way we're doing it has changed a bit, especially in the last year. Interviews are virtual now when they used to be in person. We have made some changes this year actually to our application. And instead of 2 recommendations, we now only require 1. And what else? We expanded over the years. It used to be the only test we took was GMAT, and then that expanded to include the GRE. And then within the last couple of years, we've also included a fairly new test called the executive assessment. So those changes have taken place. And also when I started, we had paper folders with people's applications everywhere. Thank God that is gone. There is no minimum required GPA. Obviously, a high GPA would be lovely to have, but let me just give you some numbers. The average GPA for admitted students was 3.6, and the middle 80% of the class, it ranged from 3.2 to 3.9. But we really look at GPAs and test scores within the context of the rest of your story. Ideally, I would love to have an applicant with the highest GPA in the world, the highest test score, and everything else amazing, but that person does not exist. So we weigh those numbers in the context of everything else about you, your background, your work experience, your community engagement, your demonstrated ambition, initiative, your warmth, your kindness. It really is the whole package. And I would just say if you're in college now, do your best, get a high GPA. But if you're out of college, stop worrying about your GPA. You can't do anything about it. If maybe it was less than brilliant and you want to reassure us, then I would say focus on preparing for your test, because a decent test score is going to reassure us that, youth, college, that's in the past. We'll know that you'll be able to handle the academics. We absolutely accept 3-year bachelor's degree. We get many, many applications from international students, and that's fairly common in other countries, and we have no qualms about it at all. The interviews are done almost entirely by our alumni. So they have not seen your application. All they have seen is your resume. So they're going to, it's not a tricky gotcha kind of interview. It's really, tell me about your career path to date. What do you want to do afterwards? Why? What's your thought process? Getting to know a little bit about how ambitious the person is and how realistic they are about understanding their target goal. And also, why an MBA? Do you need it for what you want to do? Are you just, ticking a box, or have you really thought about what your skills gaps are and how an MBA can help you fill that? Do you have a real understanding of the school that you're applying to? Not often, but sometimes someone can come across as very generic. They have good reasons for wanting an MBA, but they don't have specific reasons for wanting Columbia. So the alum is going to want to know, what excites you about Columbia? What specifically? Are there courses or professors who are doing research that really sparks you? What is it about New York City? Why? And not just, it's New York City, but are there places that you specifically want to do an internship at? I guess we want to know that you're serious about yourself and these next steps you're taking. So we look for some base of knowledge of the program, of the industry you're aiming for. And then we look for people who are going to be engaged. So that sense of, what clubs are you interested in? How are you going to make the school better than it already is? Like I said, those alumni still depend on each other years and years out. So we want to have a sense that you're someone who's not just going to go to class and go home, but someone who really wants to invest in this relationship with Columbia and its community. we like to get the alum perspective because they have a real sense of the culture. And, part of what we ask them is, can you see this person in your cluster or your learning team? Do they feel like they fit the culture? So what we do is, as a class is graduating, we invite them all to sign up to be alumni interviewers. Those that do get a training session where we sort of go through an interview with them. They have a handbook, they have a PowerPoint they can refer to. And of course, we get lots of questions from them, which we always answer right away. And your other question was, how do we put it together? We look for alums that are in the geographic area of the applicant. And of course, that was much more important when we were doing these in person. An alum would meet an applicant in a coffee shop or something. Now, since it's all virtual, there's not that logistical issue, but still, we try to make that connection because we feel they have an understanding of where this person is coming from and what perhaps the goals that they have. If they're local, that person will have an understanding of. And, a cultural background that's similar. What happens is when you submit your application, it's complete, the recommendation's in, everything's there. At that point, you will hear from us within 6 weeks. And what you'll hear is either, I'm sorry, no, we're not moving forward, or we're interested and therefore we'll interview you. Everyone that we're thinking of admitting, we invite to interview. And interviews are only by invitation. So the applicant cannot initiate it. It's the school initiates it. Certainly, we always have a wait list because there's lots of, flux. We admit people and maybe we were their second choice, so they go somewhere else and then we need to fill that spot. So we have a pretty hefty wait list every time. Again, I don't have numbers, but a good portion of the wait list does get in. And there's not a scientific ranking system. Basically, we take a look at what the class consists of at the moment that we need to take someone off the wait list. And we're trying to have a diverse class. So, if we need more of this or that will bring that person to the fore. And also, it also depends on how close we are to orientation. Can you get to New York in 2 days? We rarely do it that late in the process, but sometimes logistical issues will weigh as well. Hopefully a student, by reading the website, by attending info sessions, by interacting with current students and alumni, by using services such as yours, gets a good sense of what's needed to do a good application. Because I hate for them to have to pay someone for things that they could probably learn on their own. But that being said, consultants, they can provide a good service. We don't have a negative feeling about consultants. In fact, I forget how many years ago, we pretty much said, can't beat them, let's join them. And we meet with consultants to give them, basically to answer their questions so they have a good understanding of what we're looking for and what our process is so they can advise their clients correctly. So, I would say there's nothing at all wrong with hiring a consultant to have a better understanding of how to approach this process. Obviously, we don't ever want anyone to have their essays written by someone else. And in fact, I can't 100% guarantee it, but you can sort of sense when the essay doesn't read authentically like the person whose background we're seeing elsewhere. And we really like to see that sense of who you are in the essay. But, I have friends' children who have asked me for advice about applying to business school. And I tell them what I know. And I think that's the same thing a consultant does. And there's nothing wrong with getting wisdom from people who understand how it works. Some of it is just applying for an MBA in general, and some is specifically Columbia. For an MBA in general, why now? We have no rule about the number of years of experience that someone should have, and there are arguments on both sides. It can be helpful very early in your career to get an MBA to help you contextualize what you see in the workplace going forward. You have that structure in your mind. On the other hand, I think it can be very helpful to start the MBA when you have some experience, because you're not just a blank slate in the classroom. You're comparing what you're hearing with your own experience and adding to the classroom conversation. I know that professors have often said to me, this was a great term because I learned so much from my students. I just think there's a synergy that comes with having something under your belt already. So why now is a good question. And I think that it's important to have done research on your own about your target industry, your target function. Again, talk to people who are doing things that you think you want to do and have an idea of how their career has evolved so that you know what you're looking for. Now, specifically Columbia, we're in New York. It is a high energy place. I would say Columbia is not a place that feels mellow. Everyone's ambitious and excited and high energy. So you need to come in with a clear direction of where you want to go, because there are going to be so many resources and opportunities that you're going to be inundated with. You have to keep yourself open to possibilities, but don't get overwhelmed by all the different things you'll be faced with. Ask yourself if you're ready to lose sleep for 2 years, if you're ready to keep yourself wide open to meeting people who are very different from you, have different understandings of the business world, who have different things that are important to them that they want to accomplish in the world. Am I ready to be wide open and yet not lose my steadfast goals?